welcome. I am so excited about this morning. Dennis and Paul have been talking a little bit this morning, and they actually talked yesterday and kind of talked about what they're going to talk about. And so I know that I'm one of these people that, you know, I look at my website statistics like occasionally, but then I don't do anything with them. And, you know, I post on social media and I look at that occasionally, but I don't really know what to do with it. And so that's what they're going to help us with today, at not only looking at those analytics, but also taking a look at your website. You know, we've got two experts here that can help us know, you know, what do our websites need to look like, and, you know, where do we need a donate button on our website, and where do we need it, and what does that look like? So I'm Robin Thompson. I am a nonprofit consultant. I live here in Eagle County, but I work all across the country, and I even have a couple of international clients that I work with, nonprofits. And I also do content creation for companies. And so what that means is that sometimes a company will contact me and say, will you write a blog for us? Will you write an ebook for us? Will you do a webinar for us? And one of the nice things is that during COVID, when my nonprofit retainer clients said, we're a little nervous here, we don't know where this is going to go, and they pulled back, then I was able to, what I say is, honor my nonprofit habit by working with companies. And so anyway, so that's who I am. But let me introduce who our two panelists are today. And so first we have Paul Abling. He has nearly 20 years experience in marketing and communication, as well as working for many local nonprofits, including the Vail Valley Partnership, Vail Valley Foundation, Walking Mountains, where he is right now. And he believes in the power of data to help make business decisions, to help organizations automate, prospect, and fundraise. And Paul lives in Eagle with his wife and two daughters. And wave your hand there. Okay, and I'll spotlight you here in just a minute. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
And then we have Dennis McMahon of HyFyve, not the other HyFyve, which is the television recording, but this is HyFyve. So who they are is a big picture marketing and branding agency that he started in 2013. He moved from New York to Eagle County in 2005. He and his team have built countless websites for a variety of industries, from industrial corporations to local nonprofits. And no matter the project, his approach remains the same. When you focus on your audience and follow the golden rule, growth comes naturally. And so welcome, Dennis. Okay, so let's see if I guess I can't spotlight you all since you're co-host. So over in the right-hand side, what you may want to put on under view is speaker view, because then you'll be able to see Dennis and Paul when they are speaking, as opposed to seeing the whole group and at the same time. Okay, well, let's get started, Dennis and Paul. So let's start out with our website structure. So many times I see these beautiful websites, but they're written for the participants that are participating in the nonprofit, and they're not written for the donor. And so, you know, it may be that if you need to go to the website to enroll participants in the program, but if you're a donor and you come to the website and in the first 10 seconds, you say, well, that's not me because I don't participate in these programs. So how do nonprofits navigate so they have a programmatic website, but also to make it donor-centric?
One vacuuming over my head as soon as this meeting began, so I had to text my wife upstairs to please take the dustbuster away from the child. It's a moment of distraction. Great way to get things started.
We can't hear it, so that's a good thing. But I never like to stop someone who's vacuuming. I'd much rather they do it than me.
So I'll get things started. Thanks so much, Robin. And it's really nice to see a lot of your faces, a lot of familiar faces out there today. Miss you guys. I hope all is well during these continued crazy times, but nice to meet a lot of you too who I have not yet met before. With regard to website structure, I found this topic really interesting because it wasn't something that I'd pondered deeply prior to being asked to do this. With the nonprofit websites that we built in the past, we've definitely focused more on messaging to what it is that we do for the community, for the folks that we help. And this caused me to kind of peel it back a little bit deeper and look into other really highly successful, well-recognized nonprofits and how they're doing things. And we happen to be in the middle of a Speak Up, Reach Out build. And then also the Eagle Valley, the Hope Center of the Eagle River Valley website build. And we started to really think about this a little bit deeper as we were doing these things. And what I say is that you have two audiences, and you also have two different areas of content throughout your website. So your home page is going to be that page where it really bridges the gap between the two. We're speaking to the two audiences in the same space, and you want to be able to, in a way, kind of alternate messaging and have it present throughout the home page. But you wouldn't really want to put a donation call to action as a highly present element on a page that's about programs or getting help, right? Like, I'm an individual that needs help. Well, then that's not really going to be the best spot to be asking for donations on your website. However, all of the many nonprofit websites will have a board page or a team page or other things, or mission, vision, values kinds of things. Those would be really great places to amplify that donate call to action, because the folks who are going to be looking into those pages, those area of content, are more likely to be prospective donors than maybe somebody who's seeking help. So very rudimentary. It probably sounds very obvious, but something that I was thinking about as it pertains to this.
Yeah, I think when you're designing a website, like all of our nonprofit websites, first and foremost, we're nonprofits working to achieve or convey a mission. So your website really needs to do that. It needs to tell your story, what your mission is, how you're activating it. And I like to think about it as, sure, we're going to have like a persistent donate button. Maybe it's up in the right-hand corner or it's in the main navigation. My experience is that's just standard things that we do as nonprofits. Like, you need people to understand that you are open for business, and by that, people can give you donations. I don't know that persistent button is always going to convert the best. To Dennis's point, testimonials, stories, photos, campaigns, those are going to do a better job of converting than that donate button in the top right. But you need the donate button in the top right or wherever you put it, just so people know you're open. So I like to think, and I encourage, us at Walking Mountains and other organizations I've worked with, is like, think about and know the path that somebody at your organization takes to become a donor. So I've heard it called a lot of things, customer journey, donor journey, life cycle stages, cultivation life cycle. It's all the same thing. So, for us, and I think a lot of nonprofits, I kind of think about it as like free event attendee, paid event attendee, then they move to maybe a small one-time donor, and then maybe they move to an annual kind of recurring donor. So different parts of your website can focus on those different stages of the life cycle. And then your kind of outbound marketing campaigns, if I'm doing what I would consider like a recruitment event, I'm probably not recruiting new donors off the couch. I'm recruiting people to come to a free event. And then when they come to the free event, maybe they become a donor then because they really liked it, or maybe they go to a paid event. But those messages off the website target the different audiences. And so it's hard for your website to be all things to all people, but use landing pages, change your message, think about any audience segmentation that you can do, and think about that journey that people take with your organization.
And I'd like to just piggyback off something you just said, Paul. You made a great point, and it's within these notes for the question is, it's a challenge that as a marketing agency, we solve for people all the time. And that is, well, we are, our donor could be anybody. It could be everyone. And it's a really difficult thing to feel like you're leaving people behind. But in marketing, what we talk about is our ideal target customer. You all have a really good feeling for, this is what my donors generally look like that provide us with the lion's share of donations. This is how they walk, talk, where they live, what their average household income is. Their age is generally between this level and that level. These are the donors that maybe give big chunks once a year. And then here are our donors that might be a smaller amount of recurring revenue. And I speak in customer terminology, so please forgive me. I'm not as adept with the donor jargon, but these are the folks that will give me recurring donations consistently, maybe on a monthly basis. Really challenge yourself to identify the characteristics of these folks, because then you're not so much leaving people behind, but what you're saying is that this is who we target, and there may be other folks that fall a little outside of that ideal target donor, but they want to be like that, right? And they will kind of work up toward it. And so you set the pie in the sky and say, this is where we're at, and then you'll dial in your messaging better to serve that audience, and other people will kind of roll into it, kind of absorbed by way of marketing osmosis.
And so great answers. And I would be curious if you all would just raise your hand. I've got gallery on right now so that I can see you. How many of you have a donor persona, that you have that those criteria set up? And so Paul's got his hand up. And if you're not on video, if you just put it in the chat box, that you all have gone through what he just said, and your ideal donor for a major gift donor, and I might even say major gift donor, annual gift donor, or what does the event attendee look like? So I would have a few different types of donor personas, and so I'm not seeing any other hands. Okay, oh wait, so John Weiss has one, Lauren has hers up, Linda Boyne has hers up. Good. Good. So some of you have done that. If you haven't, oh, okay. So Jennifer says that they have too. If you haven't done that, I would highly suggest that you go through your analytics, which both Paul and Dennis are going to talk a little bit more about, as to how to go through that and see, where are people going? What is that path on the website? And then hopefully, figure out who those people are, so you know who you're designing for, because Dennis, that is so key, to be sure that we know who that we are targeting that website for. So
I'm happy to share. I've got some templates that I've used to create these before, and I'm happy to share those. Rob and I can email them to you after the meeting. But if anybody wants a template to start that exercise, I'm happy to do it. Have some fun with it. I think Lizzie was with us when we did a couple of ours. We had like Subaru Sally and Tammy Tesla. It becomes a fun exercise, and you can really get people engaged with the process.
Right. And I think it really helps us think about, well, is it the person that drives the Tesla? Because maybe it's not. For our organization, it might be the person who, is driving the Audi. It might be, and so to know who that is, instead of, like Dennis said, instead of it just being everyone. So thank you for sharing that, Paul, and I will, because I have a feeling that some of you all may be interested. Cookie said pickup truck. No Tesla for Cookie.
Well, that's a great example. In your statement above, Cookie, in the chat, you say, you'd like your events to include all levels and all people that are available, but that persona is probably a little more pickup truck in the instance of the horse rescue. I've worked with 4-H locally on some of their events for the past couple of years, and we kind of draw the line when we're targeting our audience right around Walcott, to come to these different the livestock auction and such, so you kind of you got to speak to that audience and just refine it down. And maybe it isn't so much about donor level, right? You could have a billionaire prospective donor that's not really that interested in giving more than $100 a month, but heck, they're still being messaged to nevertheless, right? Because that's who you're looking for.
And so Cookie said one of our major donors does have an Aston Martin. So in addition to their pickup truck, right? So let's talk a little bit. Both of you all mentioned a call to action. And so, Paul, I think you mentioned about events. And so, I've heard before, we don't want to like send an email out with multiple asks in it, because then we confuse them and they don't do anything. And so, talk about the call to action on our website. Are we asking for money? Are we asking for a volunteer? Are we asking them to buy a t-shirt? Are we asking them to sign up for an event? Talk a little bit about those call to actions and what they might sound like, look like, and where they should be.
Dennis, you want to jump in first on that one?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm gonna share my screen real quick because I found that a website that y'all will be very familiar with, or at least a brand. Are you able to see the National Breast Cancer Foundation's website?
Yes, we are.
I believe this organization's done an exceptional job of sharing that call to action across their audience that they serve, and also getting people engaged to help sustain the organization. You'll notice up top here, when we think about a call to action, it's a donate button, right? And Paul mentioned this earlier. We have a persistent donate button in the header. If I scroll, it stays there, right? And fundraise. Well, fundraise is, in a way, it's still contributing to the cause, right? This is a means by which to receive more funding for the organization. And then what we do is when we scroll down, we look at this homepage and their calls to action. Join the cause, our supporters. This is definitely heavier on the message of helping us raise funds for the organization, because the name in essence says it all. We're all familiar with this brand. We know what the pink ribbon is, right? So they don't have to speak so much to what it is that we do, but they are focusing heavier on it. But then when you look down, and I'm zoomed in full screen, so it's kind of breaking their layout a little bit, I think. But you can see that the call to action, make a donation. $150 provides a mammogram for a woman in need. Give today. Start a fundraiser. Get started. Partner with us. Get started. Make a donation. Give today, right? Give today, get started, learn more, give today. They're having very consistent types of buttons. They're testing different verbiage on their buttons. The buttons are all either a pink outline, pink solid. In the case of this fundraise, it's kind of this deep burgundy color. But they're testing different verbiage on different buttons. They're dividing it within two audiences here. But in essence, this call to action, make a donation for individuals, is actually the same as this one for organizations. Doubling down on that effort. Volunteer is kind of secondary. It's just this one small content block. And then they continue to donate, get involved, right? So this is a way by which they're doing it. And then when I go in and I start to look for, about breast cancer, right? I go into here, I'm able to learn about it a little bit more. It's going to be some of the, I may be, not technically, obviously, but like if I'm somebody who's struggling with breast cancer, I know somebody who is, I'm able to get my information here. I still have my donate button available, but then I'm sorry, I lost my secondary nav here. Maybe these guys could use help with the little edits to their website. I'll give them a shout.
Hey, can I interrupt you just for a second, Dennis? For those of you out there, you probably know this, but there between the screen he's showing and his video there, if there's a line, if you wave over top of it, you can make your screen bigger and Dennis smaller so that you can see what's on the screen. So sorry, Dennis, go ahead. I just
no problem at all.
See it.
And I might be jumping ahead here, but when I get into my donate form, some things that we've been seeing pretty consistently is the recurring and the one-time options for donation, defining thresholds for what the gift will be, and then obviously including a custom field amount, And this organization isn't doing it, but also seeing another element, Red Cross does it, and let's see, various foundations, where you get to select what it is that your donation is going to go to. We have these 4 or 5 different programs. I identify most with this particular program. I know that my gift is going to go to this. Now I'm able to select and know that my gift is going where I'd like it to go. So I'm getting a little off track here, but I guess really my original point is maintain your calls to action, make donate, say donate. You know, we don't need to be too tricky with that, and just kind of keep it consistent, keep your buttons the same shape. Their donate button includes the ribbon, you know, things like that.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the only thing I would add is, you know, consider like, it doesn't always have to be buttons too, you know, sprinkle in some hyperlinks, you know, if it's a testimonial. And, you know, one of those individuals that Dennis just highlighted was talking about joining a fundraiser, you know, make join a fundraiser a link to the fundraiser place. And I do it more in email than I do on the website, but we do it both places. And typically what I find is those hyperlinks will generally perform about as well as a button. It kind of depends on what the message is, but hyperlinks are your friend as well.
And so one question, I had somebody tell me that there'd been some research done about what color that donate button needed to be and where it needs to be on the website. Can you all talk about that a little bit?
What we find when we're building brands and helping folks define color palettes is we like to reserve a color for our call to action color. This particular color is used solely for call to action, and it generally will contrast in some way to what the rest of the content may be. You can read exactly conflicting studies on what the best call to action color is for a button. Some will say, don't use red because red means stop, you know, and use green because green means go. But really what we're finding is that generally speaking, warmer colors with some vibrancy and energy do perform quite well. I have no belief that red means stop on a button. I think red it's a passionate level, it's a passionate color that communicates a level of intensity and importance to it. I'd avoid muted colors like baby blues or powder blues or light greens or other things like that, because they're a little subdued and they're really just not going to stand out when you have photography, for example, on your website that is colorful and vibrant. So set a call to action color and then use it in all of your hyperlinks, as Paul described. It's an inline text. Have it be that same. Make sure it stands out against that white or black background of your website. And just don't use it for anything else. Just use it for calls to action.
That's a good point. I think I actually ran into this recently with an individual, and the days of old where like your website all had to be above the fold are gone. Like, you know, build mobile first. Like think about scrolling, you know, and that breast cancer site was a good example of that. So sure, you're probably going to have that persistent button up top, but as you scroll down the page, there's more opportunities to kind of sprinkle in information. But yeah, the old days of above the fold are dead, in my opinion. Like the iPhone killed that a long time ago.
And so what about the location of that? I mean, I have told nonprofits for years that that donate button needs to be on the right-hand side, just because that's where we're used to seeing it. Has that changed, or is that still true?
I haven't read any studies about it, but I don't think I've ever seen it anywhere else. You know, it's like donor, event calendar, and then like a search function are typically kind of somewhere over in that wheelhouse.
I believe that part in UI design, the reason that donate would go right is because when you think about the structure of navigation of a website, your navigation should be reasonably categorized with what your buttons are, so that things work together. Here are our programs, here are our events, here is about us, here's our history, right? And we kind of have those things. You can see how that kind of flowed. Like, here are a couple menu items that are about our organization. Here are a couple menu items that are about our team and our history. And so where does donate fit in that dialogue? it's very separate. And so that's probably why it would end up on the right, much like for a commercial venture, you're going to have contact up there, right? Or shop, or your shopping cart, or other things like that, because it belongs there by way of not really correlating to other things. So that's pertaining to navigation. Within the page itself, centered is classic. If it's centered within the page and you sprinkle it throughout, you don't want to be like, like the My Pillow guy, like buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now, donate, 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 right? Because then you feel salesy and kind of annoying. You'd rather just kind of have it show up along my journey, no matter what page not no matter what page I may be on, but depending on the page I'm on will dictate the frequency. If I'm on a team or a board page, it'll probably show up a little more frequent than if I'm in a programs page because of what we discussed earlier. But yeah, just kind of have it tastefully sprinkled throughout the page, have it available again in your footer. And yeah, just be consistent.
Are there any other must-dos for, just like, you need that donate button and it needs to be repeated? Are there any other things like that that you want to be sure that you do? And I know we could go a long way down, like you gotta.
I think the big one for me, in the interest of kind of, I depending on who we're targeting, upwards of 60+% of our website traffic is from a mobile device, right? So optimizing for mobile to me is a must. And that includes your transaction pages, right? Like if you've got this great slick mobile website and then you go to make a donation and you come to this form that just doesn't work on a phone, that's kind of a missed opportunity, especially as we'll start to talk about QR codes and things like that later. So think about what's the type of information you need to collect on that form for that donation. Do you need social security number, mother's maiden name, next of kin, and all these other salutations, or can it just be pretty light and fast? And so that's a recommendation and a must-have to me.
Great.
Yeah, keep it simple. Just make it really, really easy for your prospective donor to convert, to donate. Make it great on mobile, make it work on mobile. Take a peek at your Google Analytics, see what your percentage of mobile traffic is. But my goodness, make it simple. I feel I have to guess there are probably some folks out there who still are linking out to a PayPal or something like this. Like if I go to click my donate button, now I'm kicked off site, and then my PayPal experience could be a little wonky and feel weird. I've left the site, so I don't quite have the same level of comfort. If I'm somebody who's a little older, it may make me feel a little more skeptical about actually doing a digital contribution via the website, or I may not have a PayPal account. So provide endless options, and I'd probably say dedicate some resources to ensuring that your form and your payment gateway are so easy that it could be achieved on a mobile device.
Great. Well, thank you all. And so that's a perfect introduction into how do we know if our website's doing the job that we need it to do. So tell us, some of us know what Google tracking is, and some of us know how to do it and what we should use it for. Now, I know that, like I said, with my particular website, I'm probably one of the worst at, looking at it and even analyzing it. So let's talk a little bit about that. And so just so you all know, we've talked about this, that, they don't want to get too deep into this, but enough so that you could go look at your website and the tracking and know what you're looking at. So let's talk a little bit about Google tracking.
You got it, Paul.
So first of all, I love Google Analytics. So I'm going to try and stay out of the weeds, but if you haven't been in there or you don't have it, it's easy to install. It's free. It's a little piece of code that your web developer can install quickly. There's some things in Google Analytics, like it's a very robust program. And I'll be honest, like there's probably 3 or 4 things that I use very often. And then the rest of it periodically, if I really have like a deep question. But the source medium report in Google Analytics under audiences is kind of my go-to. You can kind of see by source and medium where your traffic's coming from. But in Google Analytics, if you haven't set up goals, and I'm going to share my screen, I would encourage you to do so. Like, they're easy to set up. And so we've got a goal that basically is converted online donation. Like, that's a goal. And Google Analytics, because of how we set it up, knows if somebody makes a donation. It doesn't know the value of the donation, but it knows that a donation was made. So our system will talk with Google, they all don't. So if you're using an online checkout thing that doesn't link with Google Analytics, they typically have a function after an online transaction that says like redirect to another page. Redirect them to a confirmation page that's only visible from that online donation, and then you can set up your Google Analytics goal. So I'm going to share my screen really quick because we can look at kind of, I guess, our analytics, and this is a recent reporting window. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger.
And so while you're doing that, Paul, go back just a little bit. And so do we just Google Analytics, and is that how we set it up? And does it cost us anything? And talk a little bit just about that back end here.
No, it's free, and you can Google it, or you can probably go to analytics.google.com, I would imagine. And it's a little piece of JavaScript code. Or in like your website, there might be a feature where it says enter, GA code. There's a ton of videos out there to do it. You do probably have to get it inserted into the source code of the site from your developer. And make sure you hit all your pages, don't manually place it. If you have other systems, you can do that. Sometimes you can also include Google Analytics on like your registration system or third parties that aren't on your website, but you use to transact. So I'm happy to kind of help point you in the right direction, but it's kind of the gold standard. It's really kind of the only, I mean, you can pay for other systems, but as nonprofits, there's not really any need, in my opinion. So this is kind of an example over here on the right of the screen you're looking at of our online donation confirmation. So I can see basically all of these things by source or medium, where donations are coming from. And I just kind of highlighted a couple things that are interesting, like over on the left, like blog.walkingmountains.org, that's a blog post that made a donation. So I could go and see that blog post and figure out what was compelling on that post that made somebody donate. We've got a couple donations down here from LinkedIn and social. Regfox.com is our like Eventbrite platform. It's kind of how we do events. And then at the bottom, this is a new one that we've just started to kind of see recently, is that's donations from QR codes. So because we use UTM codes, which is a way to change the URL so you can see things in Google Analytics, I can see it in my Google Analytics report. So if you're not in Google Analytics, this is going to seem pretty deep, but once you install it, it's actually pretty straightforward. So I'm going to get out of the weeds because we could go further. And I don't know, Dennis, what do you think?
Well, a few things that you're talking about, Paul, and I'm going to just bring it back a little bit, is Paul had said with the installation of Google Analytics, yeah, just look up install Google Analytics code, and whatever the first hit is that says Google and Analytics and the link, don't worry about other third parties that might want to help you with it. You can go, you'll enter what your website address is, and it's going to churn out a little tiny code that says UA-10 digits or something like this. The reason it's difficult to speak to whether or not you can do it on your own is various website platforms have different interfaces for where you plug that little bit of code into. And when I say code, it's like a key. Think of it like a key, right? Like this many digits. In Squarespace, you go into your settings and you say insert Google Analytics, and then you copy and paste that in. I imagine that Wix is the same. WordPress is going to be might have that interface, but other builds will not. So it's very contingent on what your platform is, how you add Google Analytics to your website. In some cases, it's super easy. In other cases, you might just want to contact your web team and they can do it for you. And it'd be very, very easy for them no matter what. The other thing, Paul, if you pull up your screen one more time, I'm sorry, I wanted to just speak to that report that you were looking at. Paul was talking about how he likes to look at the source and medium. And if you look over here, and you're not able to see my cursor, but yes, the left column, in the darker gray, it says source/medium with a little question mark, Paul, right there, that's titling that column. Well, when we look down, you can see that you have in position 2, for example, the source is Google and the medium is organic. What that means is that somebody went to Google, they typed in walking mountains or something like this, and they clicked on an organic search result that was in the list, and then they came through and they made a donation. Okay. So that's what Paul is doing here, is he's looking at the first thing before the slash is going to be the source of the traffic. And then after the slash is going to be organic, or it was a referral, or it was social media, or down in number 9, CPC, which is going to be that pay-per-click Google AdWords, lots of different ways to describe what that is. So that's what's causing, that's why this is a great report for Paul and other nonprofits, because you not only see where it came from, but you can then categorize and look at, oh, it was coming from a referral source. You know, this Eagle Valley Wild is a good referral source for us. Should we be generating more referral traffic? What are the tactics that we can do to do that? Or should we be trying to play up our social game a little bit better on LinkedIn, because we can see that we had a goal come through there? It's deep stuff, but I'm sure there's some folks on the call are like, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. You know, this isn't a big deal. And others who are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Right. So I guess that's the best I can offer right now on a high level, as far as bringing it back just a little bit.
Okay, so before we move past that point, what questions do you all have about what they've just said? Because like you said, some of you all have been using it, others haven't. And so, you know, questions like, you know, the custom URL. I mean, that's something that you'd set up so that you know where people, you know, came from or to, correct? Okay, so do you all understand where we are right now? Because we're going to go a little bit deeper into that. And so I just want to be sure that we're, you know, we've got you where you are here. Okay, no questions. Good explanation, guys. They've got it. Okay, so one of the things, hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you guys? Nice to see you. Thank you for doing this for us. I just wanted to, this was a little bit earlier that I was going to ask, Paul, could you repeat real quickly the donor journey, the free event attendee, paid event attendee, and then what are your next?
Yeah, so we've got, and Kim, I can shoot you, we've got a graphic that illustrates it too. Basically at a high level, it's free event, paid event, small one-time donor, and then annual or recurring donor. And there's a couple different entry points there, right? You could come into a paid event before you went to a free event. So you could also start as like an optional event donor. Like you came to a free event, you made an optional donation, then you went to an annual donor. There's a couple different jumps and leaps, but at a high level, free, paid, small time donor, large donor, or recurring donor.
Wonderful. And then the other thing, I think Dennis might have said this about segmentation of the buttons for donations. And I was just going to share something that I had worked with this company that made it clear, this website fundraising platform company, and they were saying you wanted to be clear about if you segment what the donation is for, you do it in a more generic way, like this could pay for 10 buckets of paint for the school or whatever, rather than pinning yourself in for having to make sure those funds are set in separate buckets in case you're audited. Did you spend the money the way the donor requested it? So it's not really a question, it was just kind of a share that I had heard. And I don't know if anyone can speak to that or wants to.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we want to be able to do is if we can get unrestricted money, the more that we can ask for unrestricted money instead of restricted money, that gives us a lot more flexibility, because, you know, that dirty word of admin costs, and we've talked about that before. We need to be able to pay the staff to run the programs, to keep the nonprofit going. And so yes, I totally agree with trying to make it unrestricted and not make it, too pigeonholed. Although if we have, naming opportunities or something along those lines, we want to be sure that, we make that clear. So yes. Okay, so another question about events. So one of the things was when we talk about events, you were talking about paid versus free and having people RSVP. Is there a way to look at those differently? And Paul, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is something we do a lot of, and I think it depends on the type of event you have. But when you're doing a lot of kind of, say, recurring low cost events, $5, $10, often I've found that if you just do it for free and make it very evident that you're suggesting a donation, you'll make more in that donation than you would in the registration fee. So systems like Eventbrite, or we use a system called Web Connects, ticketing systems, registration systems typically have a donation prompt or ability to put that field in there. But think about your language. Don't just plop donation at the bottom before people give you their name and email to RSVP. Make it stronger, like suggested donation, or we've done it a few different ways. You can even do optional suggested donation or donations suggested. And people often, for those low cost events, will transact if you make that transaction easy, right? You don't need to collect all of that information that you might want to have in your donor CRM via that optional donation. Get the bare minimum, and then think about it. We kind of have a system in place where all those donations come in, and then we automate some workflows that our development staff, is then prospecting to people that have made donations. And it's successful. And I think to evaluate that process for your organization, you kind of have to look at how important is that $5 of revenue for that small event for you, or are you willing to chance it and see if you can get a $10 donation instead? And then that person was inclined to make a donation. So I kind of evaluate it based on the program and then how many donations I'm seeing for low cost programs, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely makes sense. And I know you at Walking Mountains, you all do a lot of those free events, and then you have the paid events, and just following up with those people. I know that what we typically see as nonprofits is that, especially when we have big galas or big events like that, somebody will come because their friend said, come on, you need to come. And that person may have given a donation that night because of their friend, but then they'll never turn into a long-term donor. And so sometimes I think we kind of get skewed when we look at, oh, well, look, we brought in $1 million for that event. And so we've got all these donors who will give $1 million next year. Well, it's not exactly going to happen that way if we have, friends of friends. And so following up with those people who did give a donation is important. And, some people are going to say no.
And I really don't have a whole lot to add to what you've both said. I sing from the same song sheet, and that is ask for suggested donations on free events. It puts a little skin in the game, and it makes people feel, I think it will increase follow through for attendance.
Great. Okay. So one of the things that you all mentioned earlier was a QR code and how a nonprofit might use it. It's funny because years ago, and it's probably been about maybe 5 or 7 years ago, somebody said, all those QR codes, oh, they'll never amount to anything. They're just these little ugly little squares of things. Oh, they'll never be anything. But talk a little bit about those QR codes.
Yeah, I think what's interesting. I think the pandemic made QR, stick. I think it was around before, and when the iPhones updated and it was in the phone camera functionality, that helped. But I think since the pandemic, we went to restaurants, you did all these things with them. It was all contactless. I I think event signage is a great place for QR codes. If you have things like that at events, posters, anything you can stick your phone up against. They're easy to make. They're really trackable. Some of them are designable. I'm going to share my screen because I've got a QR code graphic that you might like. Where are you?
Yeah, and I saw, I think, I don't know whether it's called free QR code or something like that. If you use Constant Contact there and you want to do a QR code, there's a place you can click on that, but you can customize them so that they're not, you know, just like a bunch of squiggly lines.
Yeah, and I think one recommendation I have, this is just the system we use. It's called QR code generator. And I think we've got a pro account. So I think it's like $11 a year or something. And these are kind of active campaigns we have running right now. I typically will put it on something with like a little bumper on the bottom that says register or donate or map, you know. And then if I have the room on the creative, I'll also put like walkingmountains.org/trail map, because there are kind of people who haven't adopted yet and they might not scan the code, but they might go to walkingmountains.org/trail map. So I think they're fun and they're handy and they're becoming more popular. My pet peeve, and I see this a lot, is when somebody sends me an email and puts a QR code in the email, because most emails are read on your phone and they have hyperlinks. So that's a lot of space in an email on a mobile device. So I just think it's funny. And it's kind of one of those things, whenever I see it, I'm like, you know, emails and QR codes are just something that to me is a strange combination.
Wow, and I would never have thought of that. I'm sure that I have committed that crime too, because I never thought about, you got to hold your phone up to the QR code. And if the QR code is on the phone, wow, good
And you
advice.
could, you know, and it's, if you are on a phone, like that QR code's a square, it takes up some space. Would that space be better for like a really compelling donor centric photo or something very mission based versus like these blocky QB things with a logo in the middle, right? Yeah, that's, or I you know where else I've seen it? I saw it on like a billboard, and I was like, how are you going to drive by this thing on the side of I-70 and scan the QR code? Like there's so many issues with that. So I think about where they are and how they can be used and have some fun with it. And I've had good luck with it recently in some Vail Daily ads. We track those, you know, just go into a schedule. People typically are reading the hard copy paper and it's easy to scan with your phone. So yeah, they're a lot of fun. What do you think, Dennis?
If you leave your screen up for a second, Paul, I'm thinking a lot of the same stuff that you are, and that is this tool that Paul is showing here, QR code generator. If you notice in the middle column, you have website trail map, and then you have lead.me with this BCK8VZ2 deal right here above the first one where it shows the link. That's a tracking link that's been generated by this QR code tool. So what it's doing then, when somebody scans this QR code, you're seeing this, that it's had 7 scans within this dashboard of QR code generator, but additionally, it should be tracking in your Google Analytics that this website visit, this website traffic came by way of a QR code. So it's creating a custom URL that's bringing you to a specific page on your website. And that's the other thing about QR codes is depending on what your message is or the campaign is that you're running, have your QR code go to that relevant content on your website. It doesn't necessarily need to just go to your homepage, right? If we have an upcoming event, we've got, I'll use 4-H again, we have a junior livestock auction, right? The QR code, if I were to create one, I'd send it to that junior livestock auction page. And then I'd also be able to say, oh, look at this site traffic. It came to the junior livestock auction page and it came by way of a QR code. That's valuable. The other thing is, and this is might sound silly, but if you haven't interacted with QR codes, do it. Try it out. When you see one, turn your camera on in your phone, hover over the QR code and see how that goes and how that feels for you. Become your user, right? And some will bring you to video content, other will bring you to other places. And recognize what it was that you felt, how you engaged with that content, so that you know when you're using QR codes, this is how I like my prospect to experience our QR code within our campaign. And then the other thing I want to double down on what Paul said. Don't use QR codes in emails. You know, there's I believe that great marketing is a huge exercise in trimming the fat and getting rid of things that we don't need. And I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but I'll try to make it quickly. There's no need to put a Facebook or a LinkedIn or an Instagram icon on your print advertisements. Nobody can get to them from your print advertisements. Link to your website. Don't worry about that stuff. However, if you have a campaign, use a QR code, because now you're connecting the traditional media world with the digital media world. You can't go the other way, right? Then things like even an email signature. You don't need to put your email address in your email signature. Everybody knows what your email address is. It just came from your email, right? So trim the fat and find places where, am I using digital media in the right capacity, or am I just putting extra stuff in here that's detracting from my primary objective? And think about that bridge between digital and traditional. And QR codes are killer for signage. They're great for print ads. They're great for posters. It's an easy way to pass by and get more information if I'm interested. And I'm so thrilled that they're finally coming to light. They've been popular in Japan for the past decade, and it's like, why aren't we doing this? But now they are, and they're a terrific tool that's free and easy to use.
Well, thanks for that. And the other place that I use them is when I am doing presentations. I can put them on my PowerPoint slides and put them up on the screen, and people can hold their phone up to and you know, and it doesn't always work, but most of the time, if they put that QR code in the middle of their picture, because they don't have to take, and you all probably know this, but you don't have to take a picture of it. You just have to activate your camera. And so that's one way that I've found that it is, you know, that they work really well.
That's a great.
And I'd recommend too, like in that regard, test it. Like if you're putting it on a poster, some designers who haven't worked with them a lot, they're getting smaller. You can make them a lot smaller than you used to be able to, because the cameras are good, but always test it before you print something, because you know, especially like if you're running a small ad in the Vail Daily and you have to put a small code on it, like it's probably not going to work because the print quality is not very good. So just test that code before you commit any budget to printing something professionally.
Good point. And again, I mean, there's free ones out there, and you know, and I don't know what the one's called, and maybe it's the one that you use, Paul, that is, you know, the Constant Contact links you to. And so you can try it out that way, and it generates it. I mean, it generates it just like that. And you know, it's pretty fun because you can take people anywhere. You can take them to send you an email. You can take them to sign up for a newsletter. You can take them anywhere with the QR code. So thank you all for explaining that. So if you all have any other questions about that, I saw that Cookie wanted to know what it stood for, and thank you, Kim. Quick response is what it stands for. And I don't know that I ever knew that. So thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit, since we're, you know, talking about the QR codes and how it directs people. Let's talk a little bit about the various donor CRM and databases, whether we're talking Bloomerang or Kindful or Razor's Edge or Salsa or you know, so how can that information that, you know, we're gathering be useful when the fundraiser makes a call to the prospect or donor? So tell us a little bit about how we can use our databases.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just went through this at Walking Mountains, and we moved from Razor's Edge to Bloomerang. I reviewed most of the systems that were out there, and you know, they're all good at doing what they do. I've been at multiple organizations that have used Razor's Edge, and I'm sure there's probably people on the phone that use it. Razor's Edge is a very insular program. You can't get data from non-Razor's Edge systems into Razor's Edge. So that's why we moved to Bloomerang. Bloomerang's got an open API. So I can take data from the registration system where event attendees are coming, or my website online donation system, and we can plug it straight into Bloomerang. There is no data entry from an individual. It all happens naturally via the bridges. So what's the case for why that's useful? Think about your fundraising as, I'm going to call Paul this morning. He's on my call list, and I'm going to ask him to make a gift. I need to log into my donor CRM, get Paul's contact info. How great would it be if when I do that, before I make the call, I see that Paul clicked on an email yesterday. He went to an event last week. He went to this page on my website. He got a home energy audit. There's all this information in all these other systems at your organization probably that isn't in your donor CRM. So we've worked really hard to get any touch point at the organization that we can into our donor CRM. And that for us was Bloomerang. And I'll just show you what it was. There were other systems that we liked. It wasn't like, also, I'll tell you, I'll just throw Razor's Edge under the bus one more time.
Some people are going to absolutely love that you're throwing Razor's Edge under the bus. Other ones are going to say, wait, it's my favorite.
And my colleague Tessa Allen's on the call, and she can speak to it more. She manages our database. So this is an example of a record in Bloomerang and like other information that's in there that wouldn't have been in Razor's Edge for us. So this is actually my record because I've donated like $6 recently to the organization as we were testing things. But you can see when the donations came in. You can see I got mass emails. You can see if I clicked on the email, if I had registered for an event, you'd be able to see it. We continue to kind of work with this. It's fairly new for us, but it is possible. And I know it sounds difficult, but it's really not. And if you're going to make the investment to move from Razor's Edge or don't move to Razor's Edge. I'm going to do it again. If you want to achieve this vision, I think Razor's Edge is a great system. If you're a national nonprofit, the analogy I'll give you is it's a Greyhound bus. But how many of us need a Greyhound bus? Like maybe we just need a little 15-passenger van. And that's what Bloomerang is great for, Kindful. There's a bunch of other ones that I liked too. Neon, I think, was pretty good. And all those systems, you can take data from other places and put it into your CRM. So I can basically give my development team information at their fingertips without doing anything. And when they go and they log in to make a call or send an email, hopefully they see something that helps them do their jobs. So that's a lot to throw at you, but are there any questions about that?
And so, Paul, while people are typing that in, one of the things, do they, when you, before I know what Walking Mountains had, and I can't remember if it was Constant Contact or MailChimp or whatever. Okay, so that CRM sat over here, and then the database sat over here. And what we would see, would there be problems when people unsubscribed to the newsletter over here, but unless we printed something out, we didn't know that they had unsubscribed in Razor's Edge. And so they kept getting newsletters and then they would get upset and say, well, I unsubscribed. Why do you keep sending me stuff? So is Bloomerang now talking to that database, or do you even have that separate database now?
Oh, this is a slippery slope, Robin. I have experienced this one. And so Bloomerang talks with MailChimp. We use HubSpot is our big kind of email sending system for our newsletters. But with Bloomerang, we've kind of taken the donor communication, like our donor newsletters or that preference group, and we send it straight, or we will be sending it straight from Bloomerang through MailChimp to just donors. So it's a little messy for us because we have like 37 other email preferences. If you want to do energy efficiency or climate, you're going to be in HubSpot still. But we'll put a link somewhere that's like you can manage all your preferences. I think the longer you have an email system and the bigger your organization gets, the more that this challenge just kind of continues to like circulate. Especially if you have multiple people sending different types of emails from different departments. One thing that we do via HubSpot, and I'm going to get into automation a little bit, is that when somebody makes an optional donation through our system, it goes into HubSpot and it sends an acknowledgement email from James, our development officer, our director of development, directly to that person, thanking them for that optional donation, asking if they want a gift receipt. And there's like a little nudge for, would you like information about becoming a member? James doesn't have to send that email. It happens automatically through workflows that we've set up. People have responded to them, and then it's just a nice way to thank you. And James doesn't have time to send personalized emails to every $5 optional event donation. So that all is something that's very trackable and that we do very easily. He would see it in Bloomerang. Workflows are powerful. And I think if you're at a larger organization and you're trying to build all this retroactively, I think that's almost harder than building it from the ground up at a small organization. HubSpot's free for under, I think, 1,000 email addresses. HubSpot has automation baked in. You can build a website on it. MailChimp, I think, is free for under 1,000 subscribers. When we moved to Bloomerang from Razor's Edge, we did have to pay some fees, right, to convert the database. And when we were in Razor's Edge, I think we had like 17,000 records, but we only had, I think, like 400 or 500 active donors, something like that. So there was a lot of fat in there that needed to be trimmed. So we did pay Bloomerang to help us with the conversion. And now I think we're down to like 5,000 people in the database. We know it's all people that have been around us recently, instead of this paying all this money to like have people in a database that we weren't reaching out to. So I think we're saving thousands and thousands of dollars a year by using Bloomerang, and it also allows us to get other information in there. So that's my last rip on Razor's Edge. We were also on RE7. We weren't on like Next or some of the new fancy ones. But Razor's Edge is crazy expensive. It's a Greyhound bus, and we just needed a little 15-passenger van.
Yeah, and I will say there's, and I don't get any commission or anything for saying this, but one of the companies that I've been working with is one called Virtuous. And Virtuous has, do you know them? Were they one that you looked at, Paul?
They were, and one thing that they did I really liked, they weren't quite as open as Bloomerang. They have integration with direct mail. They have like a mail house feature that I thought was pretty cool if you do direct mail, which for us, from a donor attribution perspective, I'm a digital guy, but people love mailers. They work. So
yeah, I agree. And so one of the things I really liked about them is not only did they integrate that CRM, which is basically your database, where your newsletter goes out, they integrated it with the donor database. And those two work together so well, so that you do get a report like what you're looking at, that what did they look at? And so did they, did they receive that mass mail? Did they open that? Did they, and those type of things. And so I really like that about it. But the other thing that they have built into their database, all of their people, which you're going to laugh at this, all of the people who work at Virtuous used to work at Blackbaud. And so they have taken the best pieces of Blackbaud and Razor's Edge and integrated them into Virtuous. But one of the things they have that I just love is a system. So, so the first time somebody gives a donation, then this email automatically goes out to them. And then you get a reminder that you should follow up with them within the next week. And then this happens and this happens and this happens. So you have templates, a donor template, a attendee template, so there's a lot of things that they have built into that. So, I might say that with, a donor database, be sure and look around and don't just look at how you might have reviewed databases, 3 months ago or 6 months ago, because during COVID, a lot of those companies, I guess they had extra time on their hands, but they developed a lot of very user-friendly things that we can use.
Yeah, and I think, so if you're looking to kind of achieve what I just showed you and try and pull data from other systems into a CRM, the thing you need to look for is either an API, which is expensive. Sometimes you have to have like a developer actually work with that. Like I don't work with APIs. I'm not that smart. But there's a system called Zapier, Zapier, and that is like, it's like the secret sauce. Like it connects HubSpot to Bloomerang, it connects Google Sheets to Bloomerang. If the system integrates with Zapier, and you could just go to zapier.com and like look for any systems, maybe you can look for your CRM. And if it shows up and it says there's a Zap for it, you can get it into other systems. So I won't evaluate at this point any system for anything digital like this that doesn't have Zapier compatibility. Like if somebody shows me something for like, hey, I want to do a registration platform for volunteers, and I'm like, okay, it's not on Zapier, let's go find one that is, and they're out there, and it makes your life a lot easier.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. And we're going to get off of databases right now, just so that Paul doesn't have to do one more time of us against against Razor's Edge. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So let's get back to talking about websites. So what attracts people to your website? And then what keeps them on your website? Dennis, do you want to, talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of read my mind, because I'm sitting here kind of chomping at the bit thinking, yeah, we can build a great website, we can get all this stuff, but how do we get people there? What are the campaigns and the methodologies to get people to come? And while we were talking about these systems, email was a big part of the conversation, and I want to express to everybody, email is the craziest thing, because it would be so easy to assume that email is dead, right? Like we get spam, we sign up for all these things, but the fact of the matter is, and I'm gonna get this metric wrong, but you have a 258 times higher conversion rate by way of doing a well-formulated email campaign than you do by doing a paid social media campaign. And the reason being is very basic, and that is, if I'm receiving an email from you, that means I have expressed interest in your organization, right? I am low-hanging fruit. I am your target audience. I don't need to be marketed to, because you've already won me over. And yes, emails get filtered into a promotions tab or Gmail or other things like that, but nevertheless, continue to email. And I want to just talk about email a little bit more in that, like I said earlier, with other elements of design and messaging, keep it simple. If you have an event, message to the event. You do not need to have an email that scrolls 3 miles long because you feel like you have so much to say. Messaging is not about you and what you have to say. It's about your target audience and what they need to receive. And if you keep it simple, we'll use the event as an example. Talk about the event, give me a call to action to get me to the event page so I can learn more about the event. Give me a snippet of the event, tease me a little bit, make me hungry for more, and bring me over there. I don't need all the details of the event in the email. Date, time, cost, location, and a quick overview and a really inspiring image to get me there, and a call to action to get me there, great. And then the other thing that I would say about email, and Paul touched on it earlier, is include that call to action donate button as a universal element in the footer of every email that you send out. Why not, right? We're still keeping it simple. The introduction, primary subject of email, maybe a secondary subject of what the email should be, and then have your donate button, and then you'll have your standard formalities that come with whatever email program you have for unsubscribe, your address, whatever those things are in the footer. But use your email database to the best of your ability, and always, always continue to grow that. It's an incredibly valuable asset.
Dennis, that is such good information. And I'm curious that those of you out there, put in the chat box if you include a donate button on every single email. I'd just be interested. You can keep talking, Dennis, but I'm curious how many people actually do that, because I don't see it very often. But Paul, I think Walking Mountains does that, if I'm not mistaken, in their signature.
We do. And I'd say, to kind of go a little bit full circle on this conversation, track that button, put a Google UTM code on the button. We also put UTM codes in our email signatures. We change those as an organization, programmatically, but if you're in development and you've got a development signature asking you to make a donation, there's a UTM code behind that link. And I can see in Google Analytics if donors click it and make donations. And it's not as much as Google organic traffic like we saw on my screen, but people do it enough to make me curious about what else I can track, right?
Right. So Cookie says that they do. Tricia says we don't, but we will now. Good job. Lizzie says we don't, but we ask at every program registration. Good. Terry says that they do. John says we don't do it yet. So John's going to put it in there too. So great point. And so I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dennis, but I thought that was important that we like really focus on that point, because that's important.
Absolutely. And I was really speaking more to campaign email, but I love what you're saying too about just having it as a call to action in your email signature, have it baked right in there. And yeah, use a tracking code. If you're not familiar with tracking codes, Bitly is something that we use. It's bit.ly. And what you'll do is you'll put a link to your donate page into Bitly, and then it'll spit out a link that you can use to include in your email signature. Very, very easy and free. Something I saw just recently that I thought I'd like to share with you all. If you're doing any bit of paid media, if you're using Google AdWords to advertise at all or have any experience with that, I found a great example that I thought you should see. Are you able to see my Google search results page?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. I typed in Red Cross into Google search. And what Red Cross has done is they actually have a paid ad in position 1. They're going to show up in position 1, right? Because it's Red Cross, and I use the word Red Cross, so it's going to show Red Cross. We know that this is a paid ad because it says ad right here. Paid ads are always going to take hierarchy over organic positions, which are going to be here that don't say paid ads. But look what Red Cross did. And I am thinking of this as it applies to your events or other initiatives or campaigns that you may be running. For a small cost, not in the case of Red Cross, right? Because they're giants. But when we think of, if we think of our target audience is, let's just say, Eagle County, people over this age in Eagle County that could attend a particular event. And now is the last 30 days before the event that we want people to register for an event. You create your AdWords account, and I click this first link for Red Cross, and I didn't even know I was doing it. But this was an ad campaign to donate to relief for Hurricane Ida. How timely and relevant.
Hey, and Dennis, I don't know if you know that nonprofits can get the Google NPO grant and you can get free ads. Red Cross isn't paying for this. We do it. We don't pay for it. We do pay an entity to kind of administer our campaigns, but it's up to $10,000 in fake money. It's like monopoly money, but it's called the Google NPO grant, and it's free. And I would encourage you all to do it. Even if you don't know how to do it, it's all free, and it's exactly what Dennis is showing.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks so much for pointing that out, because most of my clients are hustling. It's consumer or industrial brands, right? And it's for-profit organizations. But isn't that nice how that was right there, page 1, position 1, and it may cost you nothing to do that to support your upcoming event. And if you also think about it this way, and you have an upcoming event that you're messaging about, and it's for organization XYZ. Well, if I type in an organization in the search bar and I'm geographically placed within this region of Eagle County, I'm probably looking up that organization's name because I'm interested in the event that I saw. And now position 1 for free is a paid ad. Thank you, Paul. That brings me right into the event that I'm looking for. If we go back to the search results, we can also then see that here's my organic result, and that's going to bring me into the home page for the Red Cross with a variety of calls to action and stuff. So I thought that was a great little tool to get people into your website in a timely fashion for a particular campaign or event. There are many, many other platforms I could go on and on about different campaign tools to use, but in our small community, I still love posters. I still love posters at the post office and the grocery store and the hardware store and wherever else there are high traffic areas that people will continue to frequent regardless of how many COVID cases are out in the community. There's still places that we need to go. Make a nice poster and make sure it's consistent with all of your messaging and things like that. I think that's a great tool. Social media is a funny, fickle thing. where you kind of got to pay to play now. You're not going to really reach a new audience by way of just posting on your social media page. So be sure to reserve ad budgets and target accordingly to that ideal donor or whatever it may be for what it is that you're looking to promote at that moment. And use the social media platforms that your audience frequents, right? If Facebook is, you ask a 25-year-old about Facebook, they're going to be like, ew, right? No, my mom is on that and I don't want to be there, right? Facebook could be a good platform for donors because it's kind of aged out, if you will. But Snapchat might not be the place to put your dollars, or TikTok or other things like that. It all depends on, think of the areas where your audience frequents and then distribute your message there. I watched a video the other day that, and this is about customers. I'm going to drop it into the chat, but I'd encourage everybody to take a peek at it and think about how it applies to you and your organization. Influencer marketing is a very trendy buzzword that's happening, where I pay Kim Kardashian to use my makeup and then she posted on Instagram and now I sell more cosmetics, right? It's a similar concept in the sense that it's about going where the influence is. If I know my donors frequent this particular website or this particular type of content, well, I ought to be trying to partner in a way with this organization or distribute my content via this channel so that I have advocates, writers, other people that are saying, hey, this is a really great place, or how can we work together? How can I give this organization or this publication or whatever it may be something to help them? And then in the end, they're ending up talking about me too. And that's where I know my donors go, right? Check out that video. It's going to give you better, deeper examples and expand upon this idea. But this guy, Rand, that put this together, he's a leader in this stuff and very, very smart. So I encourage you all to take a peek when you get a chance.
Great. Okay, so we're down to like the last 12 minutes. And what I would like you all to do is either you can unmute yourself if you'd rather do that, or you can put it in the chat box as to what questions you have. We're going to keep rolling, but if there's things that we haven't talked about that you'd like to hear their answer, please do type it in the chat box or raise your hand, and you know, you can unmute yourself. But I'm going to ask Paul, you and Dennis, what are some things that I haven't asked you or that we haven't talked about that you really feel like that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, you know, I kind of look around the board and, you know, I'm familiar with, you know, many of these organizations. And I think I've worked in enough nonprofits where I've seen kind of an alignment or not an alignment of sales or fundraising and marketing. And I know that there's some smaller nonprofits that might not have marketing staff and fundraising staff, but if you're not aligning those two components of your business, like I feel like my job in marketing, I'm not going to make the hard ask. Like that's not what I do. My job is to bring leads or prospects from a fundraising perspective to development that they can go and chase and do their thing with. So I've been at nonprofits before where it wasn't necessarily like that because of other priorities, right? And there's no right or wrong way to do it. But if you have the staff, you know, making sure that marketing and fundraising are aligned is definitely a recommendation.
Great. Okay, and Dennis, before we go to you, Gabrielle has a question. So Gabrielle, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hey, Dennis, it's Gabby.
Hi, Gabs.
How are ya?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, I just wanted to ask you guys if you have any insight to offer on navigating a shifting target donor. So for nonprofits who tend to have an older donor base, and historically their marketing has been geared towards an older audience, but they've taken on some initiatives to rebrand and really start reaching a younger demographic. Do you guys have just any wisdom to share on really going after both donor profiles? and really, you know, kind of more of like an education / awareness campaign versus just donation driven campaigns?
I go back a little bit to the idea of you're identifying a variety, a variation of your target audience. Think of where that younger donor base is going to frequent as it pertains to media and other places like that. And also consider fonts, imagery, tone, that inspire that person, that makes it feel like I can connect, right? If we were a little old and stodgy or something in our look and our feel and our vibe, because that was most applicable to our target audience before, skew a little bit younger. And I hope I didn't offend when I said that, but I'll be very, I think it's just true. We got to be direct, right? Skew a little younger in the way that you're doing things and what you're using for target imagery and such. And let's go back to Facebook real quick. Facebook stinks for young kids because it got old. But guess what? When we're older and we're looking down at TikTok, not looking down upon, but looking at it and going, that is really hilarious and cool and funny and a little creepy, right? We're interested because young kids are doing it. Think about music and rock and roll, right? The cool stuff is the young stuff. So when we move our vibe a little bit younger, an older generation isn't going to, unless you go way too young in your look and feel, older generation is not going to feel like, ew, that's not for me anymore. It's going to be like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's neat. What is that? So you could just kind of move, gently in a direction that feels a little more on par for that audience.
And to add to that, once we've done that with the brand, and once we've really shifted the visuals and the tone of voice and everything to a younger audience, do you really feel that social media and paid media is like, we're not bringing influencers into the nonprofit
Right.
world, so do you still feel that with today's Facebook advertising world, do you feel that it's, and maybe this is, Paul could weigh in more from the nonprofit perspective, do you feel that you're reaching, you're navigating this evolving target donor through social media only, or do you have any other just out of the box thinking, things that we're not thinking about to reach a younger audience and get them engaged?
I think so. This is a challenge probably for everybody on the board here. I think the next generation or the younger generation isn't philanthropic the same way that their parents were possibly. So I think everything we've discussed is right on, but I think it's all about the mix. Like, when we run donation campaigns on Facebook and we throw a little bit of money at it, we might convert a couple, but it typically isn't a direct conversion campaign. It's an eyeballs and mission extension campaign. Like, what is the mission of Walking Mountains? How can we reach people that we would like to? And I think changing your look and your style and your creative is all great and relevant, especially if you're, if I'm targeting an 80-year-old, right? It's going to be different than if I'm targeting a 25-year-old, but I think it's also about your programming or your mission. Like we do a really fancy gala one time a year and it's a great event. Would I do that exact event for 25 to 30-year-olds? Absolutely not. It's too expensive and it's not the vibe. So I think, if you believe in the mission and that this younger generation is going to engage with your mission and hopefully be philanthropic, like think about events that they want to go to. And if they want to go to the event, you got to get on TikTok to convince them to do it. Maybe try it. I mean, we haven't gone TikTok. I get reluctant on social media. We don't have the staffing to manage like 37 different social media outlets. So if you're going to do it as well as you can. But yeah, I think it's a conversation that we're all going to be having for a long time. And I think what I've also found with the younger generation as well is there is philanthropy there. It's different than their parents. I also think it's very like earthquake in Haiti or cause or climate, terrible things happen and these like micro fundraisers pop up and they raise a bunch of money really quickly. And I think that there's a lot of pull towards that, and I think us as fundraisers and marketing people, have to figure out a way to convey our missions and their importance and ongoing support, you know, as Robin said, right? Unrestricted, keep the lights on fundraising versus earthquake in Haiti. And that's super important too, don't get me wrong, but it's hard for us to compete with that type of campaign. It's kind of my takeaway.
What you touched on there, Paul, that I think is really important is that those things pull at the heartstrings of the individuals on a broad scale. And so for your message to do that, think about what it is that your nonprofit stands for. Provide an example of a particular case or case study or instance or individual or something that can be helped within the community that feels like I can actually make a change by giving, as opposed to a very big picture idea that I'm giving to an organization. I'm giving because I can help someone like this. That I think that would help with a more personal connection with messaging, as we're all so inundated with large brand requests from whatever type of marketing and media.
Great.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, great answers. Okay, so Dennis, let's go to you and ask if there's anything we haven't talked about that you think is important for nonprofits to know.
Keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. Everything that you do, and be very, very consistent. It's something that anybody who's worked with me before knows I'm kind of exhausting in my mention of this. When you're tired of the images that are on your website, or you're tired of the image or the logo or whatever that has to do with your event, go ahead and use it for the next 5 years after that. Because although you've seen it 1,000 times, your target audience probably saw it twice. And you need that memorability and recognition to begin to get baked into people's minds. So stick with your hero image set, stick with your color palette, stick with your fonts. We don't need a special font for every event. Stick with your message, say the same things, copy and paste. Seriously, it sounds really boring and uninteresting, and you will, I guarantee, be bored by it. Many of you are probably experiencing this now, but just keep doing it. Because it's not about you, it's about everybody else, and none of us have seen it as much as you have.
Great. Thank you for that. And Cookie said, because of the drought and the cost of hay, we did a specific email campaign for hay with the dollar target, and it was completely successful for multiple generations. So that's very cool.
That's
okay.
great.
So to wrap up here in the last couple of minutes, and you all may have already said this, but it may be worth repeating. I always like to ask all of the guests, if you could wave your magic wand and bestow one piece of knowledge or wisdom on nonprofits, what might that be?
It's a tough one. I think it's getting harder to fundraise, frankly. I think we have all these tools, but I think there's a lot more noise in the marketplace, and personal relationships are more important than ever before. So I think as much as we want to transition to digital, like, we're going to have to be boots on the ground and networking and making connections. Especially, we're very fortunate here to be in kind of a smaller community, but I think, yeah, the stuff that we used to do 5 years ago doesn't work as good as it, you know, it doesn't work like it does today. And I'm sure that 5 years from now, you know, we'll all be talking about how we should have been on TikTok or fundraising with Bitcoin or something. So I think it's going to get harder, but I think there's still opportunities.
Great. Thank you. Dennis, what last words of wisdom?
It was actually, Paul kind of stole it from me. We're all talking with people. It's all about being personal. It's all about connecting emotionally with individuals. So never lose sight of that. We're all humans. We all want to connect deeply with other people. We want to be liked. We want to like other people. That is our desire. And so just always keep that under everything that you do, that we're talking with humans here. This is not a formulaic kind of thing, and just continue to build personal connections and look at your audience and what it is that that drives them, and feel for them, and they'll feel for you. And I just think that's so critical to everything.
Wow, that's awesome. You said he took yours, and I thought that was an awesome answer too. So let's all thank our guests. If you have your camera on, give them a high five or whatever it takes to thank them. We appreciate so much you being willing to share with us today. This has just been so insightful. I've been here like taking notes quickly, and so the recording will be available because I did remember to turn that on today, which is a great thing. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. The last one of the Nonprofit Learning Series of the year will be on November 4th. So go ahead and mark it on your calendar. It will be a funder session, and I'm still waiting to get confirmation back on who the funder will be. And we want to thank the Vail Valley Partnership for sponsoring this, for Mountain Youth, and also for US Bank. They make this possible so that they do the marketing and send it out to you also. As you all look in the chat box here, you'll see everybody saying thank you. And I've gotten some personal messages too. So again, thank you all. And we just appreciate all you do for nonprofit world, and just help keep us on track so that we can do what we need to do to help those we serve.